Installing the suspension harness in your Dusty flight case is very straightforward. The harness comes in two parts. Both are strap assemblies in a T shape. One of them has a hard spacer with a piece of foam attached to it, and that'll be your top harness. And the other one is identical, it just doesn't have this spacer piece. To install the harness, it's best to unclip the parts from each other and spread them out so that you have a T shape. We're going to install the T with the long side across and the upper part like that. The kit comes with 2 screws with washers attached. The screws go through the grommet and then into the cast-in nuts in the side of the case. Tighten it down, and there it is. So I'll go down and do the second part. Now this is a mirror image of how the top one was. You want the top part of the T, the width of the case, and then the, what would you call that part of a T? The trunk of the T. Goes down. Same thing with the screw in the grommet. Just make it snug. You don't want to over tighten it too much. There we go. Now that's ready to accept the harp. In some cases, we want to make sure that the levers are still not going to touch the sides of the harp case, and we advise that you take your harp out of its soft case and play around with a number of block sizes in the pillar pocket, and it doesn't have to be on the lid, just on the base piece, to make sure that when the foam is in there and your harp is laying down, that there's plenty of clearance for the levers. All right, so we found that 2 inches usually works pretty well, so we're just going to go with that. This is a 26-string harp, so definitely smaller than the case was designed for, but this shows how versatile the case would be. So I've somewhat centered the harp within the confines of the flight case itself. There's a couple of factors that will determine what a smaller harp will do as far as fitting inside the case. Primarily, it's how does the bass fit within the area that's available for the bass. In this case, it could go all the way down to the bottom. That's not necessary in this case. The other limiting factor is this block you want to make sure is below the level of the levers, so it's not pressing on the levers from the opposite side. So this one fits in pretty good like that. And again, for protecting the levers, when we have the harness cinched down nice and tight, it's going to put a little bit of pressure on the levers on the underside if you didn't have this spanner piece. So this just slides along the top and makes sure that the strap is coming out, across, and back over, and only putting pressure on the top of the neck and not the levers themselves. That's real easy to adjust just by sliding it on the strap. So we've got the harp set in there with the ring portion pulled over. I'm going to attach the 2 clips. And from here, it's a matter of tightening down the straps alternately so you don't get too far off to one side or the other. We want this ring nice and centered in there. Go. You can see that the straps are pushing in on the sides of the harp itself. The top doesn't have to be super cinched down yet. We'll deal with that when we get down to the bottom part. Speaking of this, it's exactly the same as the top portion. Buckles. Make sure we're centered. Tighten it up. With these straps, it's real easy to take the loose end of the strap, hold on to the part that isn't going to move, and pull while you're holding this in place. And the buckles will just slide right along those very easily. Alright. There we go. So that's all cinched up pretty nice. The harp itself won't be able to move within the confines of the shell. It's being held away from the shell by the padding that's installed inside the case permanently. If you do need to add pieces of foam, feel free to do so. They might or might not contact with your harp depending on its size or configuration. But that is pretty much it for the harp. Harness. Definitely go ahead and put the lid back on and make sure it will clear, particularly this edge. If you need a little bit of extra room for the lid to clear over the front, you can shift the harness so the harp is sitting closer to this back edge, and that will give you more room at that front point. Otherwise, when you get to your destination, there's no need to take off the lid again. It can just prop itself up, and taking the harp out is as simple as undoing the two clips. And out it comes. You may or may not need to adjust the straps because they are snug down pretty tight. It's probably a good idea to loosen them up a little bit before putting the harp back in and reassembling things.